I still hear your voice at night. Make me feel alright. Jump right back into my life. Cause we could dance the night away. Make me love you through the haze. Ain't no need to be afraid.
Hey, have you heard about the day an entire school couldn't stop laughing? It started with a laugh. Just one student. She laughed during class. At first, nobody thought much of it. Maybe someone told a joke. Maybe she was in a good mood. But then she couldn't stop. Minutes passed, the laughter continued, and soon another student started laughing. Then another. Within hours, an entire classroom was laughing uncontrollably. Some laughed until they cried. Others collapsed, exhausted. Teachers tried to calm them. Nothing worked. The school had to close.
Yeah, I have. That story is wild. Where did this happen and how far could it go?
It happened in 1962 in Tanganyika, what today is part of Tanzania, at a girls' boarding school in a village called Kashasha near Lake Victoria. It began with 3 students and spread through the dorms and classrooms. Within days, dozens were affected. The episodes varied. Some lasted a few minutes, others hours. A few came back and on for days. But it wasn't just laughter. Students cried, screamed, complained of headaches, dizziness, trouble breathing, intense anxiety. Teachers weren't affected in the same way, and the school eventually closed. But when the students returned home, similar outbreaks popped up in nearby villages. More schools closed, more families were affected. By the time it ended, hundreds had experienced it.
That's incredible. Did doctors ever find a cause? A virus, contaminated food, poison?
They looked. They tested for infection, food contamination, waterborne causes, toxins. Nothing turned up. No consistent physical disease explained the symptoms. That left experts reaching for other explanations. Over time, most researchers concluded they were looking at a classic case of mass psychogenic illness, sometimes still called mass hysteria, where real, often dramatic symptoms spread through a community without an identifiable organic cause.
Mass psychogenic illness. So people weren't faking it?
Exactly. The symptoms were very real to those experiencing them. Pain, vomiting, fainting, the uncontrollable laughter. The key is that the origin is psychological and social, not a pathogen. Stress, anxiety, and shared expectations can cascade through a tightly connected group, especially in an environment like a boarding school, where students live, study, and sleep together. In the Tanganyika case, the outbreak happened just weeks after the country gained independence, an enormous social shift. There was stress from political change, social uncertainty, strict schooling, pressure on students, and cultural tensions. Those conditions create fertile ground for psychogenic spread.
So emotions and behaviors can spread like an illness? How does that work?
Think of it like emotional contagion. Humans are hypersocial animals. We mirror each other's expressions, moods, even breathing patterns. On a neurological level, mirror neuron systems and empathetic circuits make us pick up cues from others and unconsciously imitate them. In a tense, anxious environment, one person's visible distress can activate similar responses in onlookers. When a symptom is dramatic, like uncontrollable laughter, it grabs attention, becomes the dominant narrative, and others may start exhibiting similar reactions. The belief that something serious is happening amplifies fear, which feeds more symptoms. It's a social feedback loop, not a biological one.
Are there other examples of this happening?
Yes. History has a few notable examples. The dancing plagues of the Middle Ages, outbreaks of fainting among factory workers, and the 1980s Tanganyika episodes remind us of other school-based outbreaks, like laughing episodes in other countries and times. More recently, similar dynamics show up in social media-driven moral panics, or mass anxiety around perceived threats. The pattern is similar. Stress, a triggering event, a closely connected population, and a cultural framework that makes certain symptoms meaningful.
That's incredible. What can be done when something like this happens? How do authorities respond without making things worse?
Responses matter a lot. First, it's important to treat symptoms as real and provide medical and psychological care. Dismissal or ridicule only increases anxiety. Clear, calm communication from trusted leaders helps stop rumor and escalation. Reducing stressors, modifying the environment, easing pressure, giving students rest can break the chain. Sometimes moving affected people apart and providing individual counseling helps. Avoiding sensational media coverage is also critical because attention can act as a powerful amplifier. In the Tanganyika case, once schools closed, the outbreaks moved outward, so community-level interventions became necessary.
That's incredible. What can be done when something like this happens? How do authorities respond without making things worse?
Absolutely. The Tanganyika laughter episode is an extreme but useful reminder. Our minds don't operate in isolation. Ideas, emotions, and behaviors can spread quickly through schools, workplaces, or social media. That spread can be benign, like laughter, or harmful, like panic or stigmatizing beliefs. The lesson is to pay attention to social context, address stress, communicate responsibly, and offer support rather than blame. Also, recognizing that someone's symptoms are real, even when there's no physical pathogen, is crucial for compassion and effective care.
It's both unsettling and fascinating that laughter, a thing we usually think of as joyful, can be part of something so disruptive.
Exactly. Laughter binds us, but in this case, it became the vehicle for a deeper collective expression of anxiety. The story of Kashasha asks us to be curious about how much our inner lives are shaped by the people around us. That's why we call the show Brain Glitch. Sometimes the strange things sweeping through a community start not with a germ, but with a thought.
Thanks for walking through that. It's a story that sticks with you, the sound of laughter, and what it might really mean.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back with more mysteries that begin as stories and end up inside your mind.
Hey, have you heard about this strange thing that happened in Tanganyika back in 1962? People were convinced something contagious was spreading, a virus, poison, you name it. But scientists now think the answer wasn't in the body, it was in the mind.
I have the so-called Tanganyika Laughing Epidemic. It's one of those stories that sounds like folklore until you realize it actually happened. Students at a boarding school started laughing uncontrollably, and that laughter rippled outward. The event is now a classic example of mass psychogenic illness, sometimes called mass hysteria, and despite the name, nothing about it was fake. The symptoms were completely real. The laughter, the pain, the fainting, the fear.
Right. And what makes it so eerie is that it didn't begin with bacteria or a virus. It began with the brain. Think about those tiny everyday moments. You see someone yawn and you yawn too. You hear laughter and suddenly you're grinning, even if you don't know why. Our brains are constantly copying each other. We mirror emotions, expressions, behaviors. It's part of what bonds us as a species.
Exactly. That mirroring is useful. It builds empathy and social cohesion. But under intense stress, the same system can misfire. In 1962, Tanganyika was in the middle of dramatic change, a new nation forming, fresh expectations, rising pressures. Many of the students were living away from home under strict rules and in emotionally charged environments. Scientists think that the stress needed an outlet, and somehow it found one in laughter.
The story often starts with a single incident. A few students began laughing, not politely, but in fits that they couldn't control. People watched. Anxiety rose. The brain of someone watching started expecting the same thing to happen. And for some, it did. Not because they were pretending or weak, but because human brains are incredibly sensitive to the emotional states of those around them.
When you strip away the sensational headlines, what remains is a powerful insight about social transmission. The outbreak didn't travel by air or water. It spread through human experience, through sight and sound and shared fear. Symptoms varied: laughter, crying, breathlessness, fainting. Entire classrooms and even neighboring villages were affected. Schools closed, students were sent home, and life gradually returned to normal. But the memory of it stuck.
And that raises an uncomfortable question. If fear, anxiety, and even laughter can spread from person to person, how many of our emotions are truly our own? Maybe more than we think are borrowed, unconsciously borrowed from the people around us. We catch moods the way we catch a tune, without saying a single word.
There's a mechanism behind that: social or emotional contagion, mirror neurons and networks that predict and echo others' internal states. Add a cultural context of uncertainty and strict discipline, and you have fertile ground for a mass psychogenic event. Researchers who studied Tanganyika later found little evidence of toxins or infection. The simplest and most unsettling explanation was collective stress, a shared anxiety that manifested in physical ways.
It's easy to dismiss mass psychogenic illness as just psychological, as if that makes it less real. But the pain and the fainting and the laughter were all experienced bodily. The brain doesn't separate emotion from physiology. When a whole group is primed for stress, the body will follow. And because it's social, it amplifies. One person's panic becomes many people's panic.
And Tanganyika wasn't the only place this happened. Through history and around the world, there are similar outbreaks, unexplained fainting spells in schools, sudden waves of illness with no identifiable pathogen, communities sharing symptoms. Every time the lesson is the same. Our minds are more connected than we imagine. We don't just exchange ideas, sometimes we exchange emotions.
Which is why the Tanganyika Laughing Epidemic is not just a story about laughter. It's a story about us, how deeply we influence one another, often without meaning to. Maybe that's the biggest brain glitch of all, the realization that the people around us shape our reality more than we realize.
So was the mystery solved? Not completely. But today, most researchers agree it wasn't caused by a virus, poisoned food, or toxic water. The more plausible explanation is human, collective stress and a human brain responding to other human brains. The outbreak eventually faded, the laughter stopped, schools reopened, but the memory and the lesson remains.
So next time you see fear spreading online or panic racing through a crowd, remember, not everything contagious is a disease. Sometimes the most powerful thing we catch is an emotion. Be mindful of the moods you absorb and the moods you send out.
Thanks for listening to Brain Glitch, where every mystery begins with a story and ends inside your mind. See you in the next glitch.
Next time, you hear footsteps behind you. You turn. Nobody's there, but something feels like it's following you. For centuries, people have described the same dark figure. Is it a ghost or another trick of the sleeping brain? The Hat Man.
I still hear your voice at night, make me feel alright. Jump right back into my life. 'Cause we could dance the night away, make me love you through the haze. Ain't no need to be afraid,